Quick greetings. It's time for another video. We talked about our Indian not tax document. Yes, very important document that was sent out to the Department of Finance and also to the Department of Environmental Protection of New York City. It's not that we don't appreciate the work of keeping our water clean, it's only the corporations that usually do the damage anyway. But the thing is, you set up shop in someone else's house. Is it really right to have them pay you when this is their home that you're choosing to invade? There's a whole principle going on that I don't think a lot of Indians today are aware of. I think we're so inclined to fall into the federal system. That's a brainwashing. That's a conditioning that if we don't break out of that dependent mindset, there's no way in hell you'll ever be independent. And I'm convinced that the awakening was not for federal Indians like the five civilized tribes that we always talk about, right? But we have to make the distinction. It's not so much that we are here to just defame them, but there is a distinction. And if you let them tell it, you'll think there is no distinction. We're all just one happy family, and let's all vote for Trump. And look what he's going to do. And he's going to get rid of immigrants. Well, if the two-ring circus wasn't in town, the immigrants wouldn't be here. So you have two wings of the same bird. One has to act negatively so that you run to the positive one of the time. And then when that one starts acting up, Indians go running to the other side of the circus. And no, it's like, is anyone sitting back and watching what we're doing here? Does anybody have an overview? And apparently no, because again, we have agents of the five civilized tribes, and I guess they get paid a little more. At a time like this, I would imagine that the federal government has to now dish out a little more money that they're, for these tribes to get on their platforms and start telling us about the wonders of Trump. Um, it's like I don't even. There is no analogy for this. It's just colonization. Uh, you know, gone all wrong. And staying wrong. So today or tonight, um, we are charging. Okay, let me set it up for you. So now I have put out my very first Indian not taxed uh, documentation. It's out there, and I'm just so happy about it. It's the principle of it all. You know, a system that set out to deceive, and they find out that you can deceive some of the people or a lot of people a lot of the time, but you're not going to deceive everyone, especially in the time of the awakening. Come on, let's give it up for the ancestors. Let's give it up for the ancestors, okay? So what's the setup here? How does one Indian man have the gall, the unmitigated gall, the audacity to stand up and say he's not going to pay taxes? Well, again, we looked at the Constitution. They made it like a damn phrase. Indian not tax. It's like you got to say it at one time together. It's like a freaking a grammatical phrase or something, you know? It's a word phrase. Indian not tax is like it goes together like famalamalamaly, dink the dink the woo, and all of that stuff, right? So that's the first big red flag. In the Constitution, they say it as if it's one word, Indian not taxed. And they say it both times, you know, in the initial uh, articles of the Constitution. So right there is your first clue. Why are they calling us Indians not taxed? Because that's how they're supposed to see us. That's our standing in all of the shenanigans. It's like no matter what you do, an Indian is not taxed. So if you come up with some scheme that they're getting taxed, you're going against the Constitution. And that Indian has a right to stand against that. And that's exactly what I did. Unfortunately, I haven't seen anyone do it this way. The other ways that I've seen it done is within the system. In other words, you're going to go and get like a tax exemption. You're going to still maintain that you're a United States citizen, which is a citizen of the District of Columbia. And so you like, I'm an Indian. I don't want my full birthright, but I want to go with your plan where you give me a tax exemption, which is not what the Constitution provides for me. The Constitution is trying to give me something. It's like, give me all the bullshit. You know, in the last video, it said, if you're going to give me my shit, give me all of my bullshit. Okay. Don't give me half of it. Okay. Let's go all the way with it. Give me the full range of it. Right. So as an Indian, I want the full range of my standing. I don't want some tax exemption because that gives control to the federal system, who is not supposed to have control. I don't care what no Indian says that's been brainwashed. Again, you want to stay a slave? Go right ahead. It's like trying to marry a rapist. It's like and insisting, no, I want him here. I'm not trying to, get this rapist out of my house. I want him here. He said he ain't gonna rape me no more. I believe him. That's like, somebody like a female or male, whoever, that's wants to stay with their abuser and somehow turn the sick uh exchange into something that is legitimate. You were violated. You were violated. And you inviting that thing to stay is saying, just go ahead and continue to violate me. Okay, so what we were saying, what is the justification? What is the why should an Indian expect to be treated well by this federal system, even after you defiantly told them that the Constitution that they signed, that agreement that we made, is that I'm not taxed? That is why you owe me the duty of well-being, maintaining my well-being, because we had an agreement. Yeah, you didn't mean for it to be an agreement, but that is what you agreed to. Now, you didn't intend to keep that agreement, but that is what every indication is. You honored the fact that I was not in your system. So why would you now in turn want to be like you mad, you hostile, or you gonna come for me because I told you I'm an Indian, not taxed. That's what we agreed to. So this is where Indians are, I think, going sort of like got some kind of Down syndrome going on because they're all about, I remember when I first started talking like this to someone who was a chief, and the first thing was, but they have an army. And so what that got to do with me? So you think they're going to sick an army on me because I'm standing on the Constitution? I should expect to be attacked by this country because I'm telling them what the Constitution says. Yeah, give me a freaking break. Give me a freaking break. You got to have better expectations and know why you should have those expectations. They can't do crap because they went. We know what they did. They were never supposed to disrespect an American Indian standing on the land. They pulled you in, and that was done on purpose. They misclassified you so they could do it. You were Indians in that contract. They called you black. That was the end of that. Now they're going to tax you. This was all intentional, as we read. So you don't do business with someone who does that. I'm very sorry if that's how Indians think the world goes. Well, no wonder you're colonized. No wonder. No wonder. So again, me telling this federal system that I'm an American Indian, not taxed. So it's like Indians feel like, oh my God, some people that hear, I tell my friends and they're, oh my God. Well, of course, they're not used to this. These are not Indians. These are, people who are not Indian. They can't see a life without paying taxes. Well, that's the system that the foreigners, your ancestors, were allowed to bring here by, you know, allowance of the Moors. The Moors, because they look like Indians, all of a sudden they started pretending to be us and inviting everyone into our home and also convincing us that we were the ones who did this. No, we weren't. Why would we? No, we were infiltrated, y'all. Way before colonizer got here, there were Moors, I believe, that either they married into us or but they had specific missions, and I believe it started with the five civilized tribes that informed the Iroquois Confederacy, because it's looking like the Cherokee were the first Iroquois. Now here we go with that dilemma that we talked about. We see it now happening for the first time with the Iroquois. Now, usually when someone says Iroquois, they just go right for it. They say Iroquois. They don't call it. They don't call them. Uh, what's the Five Nations? Seneca. They don't say. They usually just say Iroquois. You know, but the with the Algonquins, they never say the language. They never say Algonquin. They will spit out the tribe, so you don't know that they're Algonquin. And that's what I realized they're doing with Cherokee. Now, Cherokee could be just called Iroquois because that's their language. But for some reason, Cherokee are kind of, they are not as associated with Iroquois as they should be, especially because apparently they provided the Iroquois with the form of writing that they got. And from what I'm reading, they're saying this is coming from, the colonizer, that that's another rabbit hole. But um, so when I realized that it's indicating to me that the Cherokee were like the spark of the Iroquois. See, now you want to start a fire, you got to have a spark, that some initial, you know, uh, friction, and Cherokee are they're coming as preceding the Iroquois, whereas I used to think that the Iroquois came before the Cherokee. But I think they do that because they want us to think that this fight started more north when in actuality the the it began in the south, but they're not really making that clear to us. They're taking Cherokee and they're not calling them Iroquois. It's almost like the Iroquois are a storefront for the Cherokee. Now, as much as we talk about these other Indians, right? I've come to the conclusion that there's no reason why a tribe has to be uh, dedicated to any wrongdoing of their larger tribe. Like an Indian can say, you know what? I realize that what we did really was not in the best interest of all Indians. I don't have to associate with, in other words, why isn't it possible for an Iroquois to say, you know what? Yes, I'm an Iroquois, but looking at what I'm seeing, I don't agree with. I would not have done it that way. I just so happen to be born into this. That don't mean I have to roll with it. Like I was raised to be Catholic. That is the last thing I will ever be from this point on. I know they're good Catholics, and that's all well and good. But I can never be a Catholic. I can never be a Christian. I can never accept the Bible as my book. It's just not going to happen. And I realize that's one of the toughest things when you're dealing with indoctrinated Indians. They can't let go of the scriptures that caused them to be enslaved. They they are in love with slave masters' doctrines because they fell in love with the character that slave master wanted them to fall in love with. And it's just nothing, you got to let that play out. There's nothing anyone can do or say when someone's brains are really already locked. It has to come from within them. I mean, if they listen to you, maybe there's a chance, but usually they listen, la, 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 it's like I'm here, it's going in one ear and out the other. They, me, I guess I'm finding out that I'm actually more no nonsense than I thought. I don't coddle something that I know has the capability of drawing me back to where I don't want to be. You know, uh, any addictions, and I'm not saying I'm an addict, but any addictive behavior aside, I'm not. My goal will always be to move away from something that I know to have caused uh, more issues than I anticipated. You know, so my thought is I have to leave it and take no prisoners. It has to be a clean break from something like a religious system because it, for me, and I could say this, it's because I would be too serious with it. I take it very seriously. You know, I took it very seriously when, my spiritual life. Now, I'm not saying I was perfect, but it it affected me. I realized when I was approached by someone who was born again and they convinced me as a Catholic that I wasn't saved, that bothered me at the time. I was very vulnerable to spiritual manipulation. And so this is why I have to have a clean break, because I have to be able to take something seriously. I have to take it and trust it completely. And I cannot do that once I learn what Christianity was supposed to do and what it actually did do. And the effects are long-standing. They're very serious. And this is why I think the Moors really held high influence over Indians. They got us where we tend to live, and that is in a spiritual place. They came at us with religion, but they also enforced it. They had no problem laying you out if you were not Christian. So there was the threat of violence to be a Christian. You see, that's what the Crusades were all about. And so I have to be able to kiss that all goodbye. I could never, no, I have no need for it. Why? Because my spirituality does not live in a religion. My spirituality does not live in a book. My spirituality has to be a living thing, and it has to somehow generate from within me. And I think a lot of people are trained to not uh, that way. We it's almost like a world that we all seeking daddy. And what better way to uh, take advantage of that than having a sky daddy, you know? And I'm not saying I'm above that need. I could have definitely had more time with my father. He was taken much too early in my life. He was in a car accident when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And we never really got to bond father and son. Uh, and so uh, he was there. It's just that the nature of his work kept him out a lot so that we could afford to have a house like we have, and had. Um, and so, you know, that gap it is what it is, but I'm not going to fill it, with the BS, you know, I'm not going to fill it with a sky daddy, and. So okay, so we did our little run our mouth thing. Okay, so let's get back to what I would say. How can I stand, even as a single Indian, and demand my Indian not taxed standing? Well, because I have proof that this federal system did all it could to strip Indians of any structure in terms of a tribe. That this government is guilty and implicated in doing all it could to break up any government system we could possibly have. Now, if we were to have our own government, we definitely have to be in our tribes. We have to have our tribes around us. We have to be part of our tribes. So if the government is complicit in making that go away, in making your tribe disappear, that makes it all the more um, reason that I stand firm, because it is not by my doing that I don't have my tribe. It's the same government that saw me as an Indian not taxed. They knew that if they took the tribes away, that I'd be standing there, and then they could, you know, rely on me feeling alone, disempowered by myself. I don't, there's no other Indian around me that's not taxed. So I guess I better be taxed. So what I'm saying is, this is why this government owes us the decency of assisting. How about if maybe assisting is way too strong of a word for a demonic entity, but maybe I could say they have no right to come against an Indian, even if he or she stands alone. Why? Because you made sure that I was left, you made sure that I was left alone so that you could take advantage of me. But if I choose to, I can remain an Indian alone if I have to stand on what the agreement was, that I'm an Indian not taxed. Uh, how did they break up our tribes? How did this government, this federal system that the federal Indians love so much, how did this federal system, this foreign entity, help to dissolve tribes that would have stood as governments for Indians? How did they do it? Well, let's take a look at how they did it. They did it with the Dawes Act of 1887. So we have a constitution in 1700s, and 100 years later, would it be in the 1800s, they're already dissolving our. So although the Constitution says Indians not taxed, and they're going to do commerce with the Indian tribes, well, what if they get rid of Indian tribes? They don't have to do commerce with them. They can take the land that those Indians were on, and the government can own that land, and then they get all the profit. So let's read about the Dawes Act, because there's a couple of things going on with this Dawes Act. You're getting, well, in another article, hopefully we'll get to it, you'll see that that's where your $5 Indians are coming in with this Dawes Act, right? So that's why my document says I'm not claiming to be a Dawes Roll Indian, because there's a high probability that could be even a Caucasian could be an Indian for $5, or I should say a Native American, because what they're going to do is start taxing everyone once they, remake them into a Dawes Indian. Now, an Indian doesn't have to go by this Dawes Act, really, because they could say, yeah, I was on the Dawes roll, but I'm choosing to stand on my first birthright before this Dawes Act. I'm leaving this construct. You see, Indians have choices, whether they're Iroquois, five civilized, they can get up out of that bullshit, nothing holding them to it. If they're birthright Indians, they can be the change that their tribe needs. Like, I'm an Algonquin. And I don't really hear anybody speaking, excuse me, for Algonquins because we're supposed to shut up and let all that land we had be stolen from us. So a lot of Indians don't even want to talk about Algonquins. Algonquins were they we basically were the coast. So why is Algonquin so important? Because Algonquins are that we were the shoreline. So any trade coming in would really go through from Europe. We're the first thing. So that's why it's not that we're special Indians. I mean, we are uh, an older group of Indians, but it's that shoreline to that where Europe is on the other side and Africa. And so when they come a running, they can't run into no Chief Powhatan talking about, oh, welcome to my kingdom, right? So they get rid of that Negro, right? They say, wait, oh, you saying I can have that land over there, but I want all of your land. So no, thank you. I will find your enemy, the Iroquois, who are further inland, and together we will take over your East Coast. Why? Because you're there. We just want a clear route to our beloved Europe that we don't really love that much because we love your land so much that we would bitchify our homeland just to get on yours. Mm-hmm. So you're getting all these people that are all of a sudden they're patriots. How so? You can only be a patriot to your own homeland. But oh, you come here now and all of a sudden, oh, now you can claim land that doesn't belong to you. And then push me out the way. That's the thing. That part, that's the part. No, that day is over. Yeah, you saying Trump is gonna send people home. Y'all gotta understand something. They gotta make it look good, right? These are the same people that sat back while you've been called black for years, right? Did the Republic Party ever stop and say these are Indians? Y'all stop calling them that. But y'all got all your eggs in this freaking Republican Party. Don't get it. You'd rather have them run your show than you? You know what, y'all? I can't. I'll never understand it. I'll never understand it. Is it laziness? Is that people don't want to run their own business? They talk about being entrepreneurs. You ain't no entrepreneur. Show me your entrepreneurship by you being an Indian outside of the federal system. That's how you can be an entrepreneur. That's the only way for an Indian to be an entrepreneur. Because anything else is you just a victim of colonization, boo. That's what you are. When you incorporate, no, that's not yours. That's the colonizer giving you permission and giving you the go ahead. And, you reporting to him your minutes and all of that in your meetings, reporting back to Massa, and y'all think that's freedom. Y'all, I'm going to speak it and I'm going to keep speaking it. Ain't nobody going to get, I'm speaking for my ancestors. So, no, I'm not going to just sit here and act like this is normal. No. So, again, let's look at this DAWES Act, y'all. So, this is the National Archives, as you can see. The DAWES Act of 1887, approved on February 8th, 1887, an act to provide for the allotment of lands in severalty to Indians on the various reservations known as the DAWES Act. If we were Indians not taxed, they would not be able to do anything on our land, and we would not be on reservations. Okay? Because a reservation, that's when you're under federal and they're telling you where you can live. Well, right there, they're taking control. And Indians don't see that that's a problem. They don't see that if the shoe was on the other foot, you'd be getting paid for them using your land. Taxes would actually be any taxes they collect from their citizens, they would have to pay you whatever you wanted to be paid for it. No, Indians, they want a broker to cheat them. They like being cheated. So they can, I don't know, indoctrinate other Indians to join this crap. They, you know, are they getting some kind of payoff? I guess they said, "Fuck the land, give me a check." That's the problem with Indians today. If you don't value your birthright, you'll never get to have your birthright. Someone else sees the value of it, and they're capitalizing, and you're paying them, and that's what Indians want these days. Or at least the only ones we see, the ones that are, every platform I looked at, they seem like they talking about Trump. Most of them, are just so happy that Trump won. And then I'm seeing the fear mongering. Now the next thing is they're going to talk about wars and stuff. Indians don't have to be part of no war if they're not part of the system. If they stood in their birthright, they could have a case that no, you don't go to war on my name. Go, you can't be this country and go to war with the name of my country. You got to go. How about you go home because you protecting your home, right? You put me out on Front Street, but your home ain't you ain't. It's not being said that your hometown is going to war because you live here now. So you're using me or my birthright to drag into a war. These Indians are settling for. That's what they want. Mm. Um, the treatment of Native Americans as individuals rather than as members of tribes. Why would this government move to see us as individuals when the agreement was that you were going to regulate commerce, which that's a whole problem we talked about, but you were going to do that with Indian tribes. So again, if there's no tribes, then there's no commerce. Because as an individual Indian, you're much easier to conquer. So right there, why do we have a commerce clause when the tribes that you were supposed to quote unquote regulate don't exist because you passed a DAWES Act so you could break tribes up? See, this is what I'm talking about, Indians. This would be part of the reason why they would have to honor single Indians because it is because of you that we are single Indians in these states standing alone against this huge ass machine that think it could just bowl over us and just break all laws to do it. You got a contract there, baby. And we know that you don't want to go by it, but that is the only thing that got you here. And now that the Pope repudiated the doctrine of discovery, really, you should be going home. It's a done deal. But they're still here. They got their feet up on your couch and their stinky socks and eating up your popcorn, and they're just running the show. You walking around lost. Talk about how could I be of service? Federal Indian policy during the period from 1870 to 1900 marked a departure from earlier policies that were dominated by removal, treaties, reservations, and war. So we have a contract in the 1787, and you're warring. You're warring with the Indians. After we agreed that you would regulate commerce, which is a crazy thought in and of itself. But so we're Indians, not taxed, but you're removing us. Treaties, well, again, I don't know about the thing with treaties is real ones involve two. Oh God, how do I say this? It's like real ones don't or shouldn't involve colonization, is what I want to say. That's why they dissolved these treaties because they really were not valid because they were not looking at us as a people that were even worthy. We didn't like they didn't look at us as having the right to do a treaty because you're like a condemned people. Remember, this is all based on the doctrine of discovery, so you're already condemned. You can't do business with a condemned people, but you could make it look like you did when the Iroquois helped you draft up a constitution, and then you proceed to just break everything that the Constitution was binding you to. All of a sudden, Indians become black, Negro, color, because you never had to honor them due to the doctrine of discovery. It was all a farce, a way to look good when you're the farthest thing from good or godly. So federal Indian policy during the period from 1870 to 1900 marked a departure from earlier policies that were dominated by removal, treaties, reservations, and war. The new policy focused specifically on breaking up reservations and tribal lands. Y'all got to read that again. The new policy, now this is after the Constitution, right? They come up with a new policy focused specifically on breaking up reservations. Now, this is after you got civilized tribes, the Iroquois Confederacy. Look what they're doing after you joined them. It's almost like you do better being an Indian not in this system because look what they're doing to you when they get you to conform to being federal and your incorporated tribes, not incorporated into their system. Indian tribes don't have to be incorporated because we are the first people of this land. They should be paying us rent or what we used to call tribute because you're all over my land. Federal Indian policy. The new policy focused specifically on breaking up reservations. So now they done put you on a reservation, right? Because a reservation is something the federals created. We didn't live on no damn reservations. The whole thing was ours. So now they make you, then they break you. You should have never allowed them to make you in the first place. See, focused specifically on breaking up reservations. So when they do that, you no longer have the right on the land that was yours. And they're sending you to other places where you might not even be able, if it's another tribe that you are at enmity with, probably, that could probably be a bad thing in it right there. But so in other words, they're taking away your claim to your land by moving you off of your land. It's not yours anymore. We're moving you. What gave them the right to do that after the Constitution was drafted? It was the Commerce Clause, partly due to the Commerce Clause. They used the Commerce Clause anyway, because again, they didn't define what they meant when they said regulate commerce. So part of their regulating commerce, I guess they're figuring, well, the land is going to be part of commerce. So if there's no Indian tribes after we get rid of them, then we have to take that land to regulate commerce. We be the ones. We take the place of the Indian tribes that we just broke up with the Dawes Act and the what do they call it, allotment. This is a beast we're dealing with, y'all. This was all planned out. It had to be. The new policy focused specifically on breaking up reservations and tribal lands by granting land allotments to individual Native Americans. So there they go. The Constitution talks about Indians, but this government made up some Native Americans. So they just went outside of the Constitution, y'all. The thing with anything that's on paper, you have to be consistent with what it started out on paper as. You can't start talking about Native Americans when the Constitution designates Indians as Indians not taxed. Native Americans are taxed. And when the government feels like acting like they're not taxed, they'll make them tax exempt when they want to. It's not a standing. It's a benefit or a privilege. A standing is something that they can't take away when it's a birthright thing. Remember, real Indians had to be misclassified black, colored, Negro, while Native Americans, oh, they never was what do you call it, paper genocided. They've always been known as Native Americans, right? So they didn't get paper genocide. Only the real Indians got paper genocide. Why? Because we were the landowners. Native Americans they were going to replace us with them because they are not in the Constitution. They don't have any rights in America because they're not the first people of America. They don't have a birthright. We do. That is why we ever had what they refer to as racism in the Americas. It wasn't really racism, it was anti-Indianism. That's what it was in actuality. It's a genocide of Indians by calling them something that they're not, so you can do what you could not do to Indians, you could do to them when you call them black and African and colored and Negro. It was reasoned. Oh, wait a minute, let's read the whole thing. The new policy focused specifically on breaking up reservations and tribal lands by granting land allotments to individual Native Americans and encouraging them to take up agriculture. So whoever they got didn't even know about agriculture. That's why they're Native Americans. Indians knew about agriculture. That's why we were going to be in commerce. So they were taking our land and giving it to Native Americans, the new face of the Negro, Mongolia. It was reasoned that if a person adopted white clothing and ways and was responsible for their own farm, they would gradually drop their Indianness. So you're genociding them in the guise. Why would they want to give up being an Indian when they're Indian not taxed? Why would you want them to give up being an Indian if they, well, see, the Native Americans are taxed. It's us that's getting genocided and replaced. But the reason you want these Native Americans is because you can tax them. They're not dropping their Indianness. They're replacing Indians. They never had Indianness in the way that it is being mentioned, in the Constitution. So they would gradually drop their Indian. So how does a foreign entity come and try to make you? Wouldn't that be completely a self-serving move? Yes, it would be. It's not about we want y'all to be like us. It's we want to steal your shit. That's what this is. It was reasoned that if a person adopted white clothing and ways and was responsible for their own farm, you're just breaking up their tribes so you can take their farm and give it to others. They would gradually drop their Indianness and be assimilated into white American culture. Then it would no longer be necessary to have Indians not taxed. That's what it really was about. They were thinking only of their pockets, y'all. They wanted to tax everything that walked and breathed and had a name on American soil so that they can, these were the nobility and the at the time the Vatican, right? And it still is, but the Pope did repudiate the doctrine of discovery. You got to hold them to it, though. If you don't pick it up, it's just going to get dropped because ain't nobody can pick it up but you. That's why my notice had to go out. That's why my notice had to go out. So they've had it now since Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Um, yeah, that is the Department of Finance and the Department of Environmental Protection. Now, in my notice to the environmental protection, I did add another line because the idea is, continue to service my water sewer because that would be part of reparations for American Indians. That's, you don't want to genocide me. I do have a standing in the Constitution, so it wouldn't be any sweat off your back to continue to give me services that I need, because otherwise we might be in danger of genocide. And why would you do that when I have a legal, lawful standing in the Constitution? This is what Indians have to demand. But Indians are so focused on, oh, they have an army. Well, but all you gotta do is show that army the damn Constitution. You're not a ward of the state. You're not a foreigner. This is your homeland. You got to stand up for it. So no, they cannot sit their military on you because you're constitutionally allowed to be here as the first people of this. Of course you are. If anything, the foreigner has to go once you take up your position. So white clothing and ways, and was responsible for their own farm. They would gradually drop their Indianness and be assimilated into white American culture. Then it would no longer be necessary for the government to oversee Indian welfare in the paternalist. They never had to do anything paternalistic. We didn't ask you for that. It's always a role that you kept taking that no one asked you to do. Yeah, you are telling yourself that we wanted that. We didn't want you to be our daddy figure again. Here we go. Indians looking for their daddy, and a lot of them still want daddy here. Even if he's a foreign daddy, they still want him here, ruling over them. Then he's able to say, I was right. They are like that word that they use when they're calling us children. That's exactly what Indians are being when they say, I know I want daddy to stay. I want stepdaddies to stay. You know, um, so it no longer be necessary for the government to oversee Indian welfare. It's so full of crap. This was all about money. Oversee welfare. You didn't have to oversee anything. All you had to do was oversee the foreigners that were here in the states. We were not in your states, although you were on our ancestral territories. which is a word I don't like to use, but we're talking about our jurisdiction and territory would, it's just, we use it loosely, but it's just our ancestral lands. So they talk in ways to make it sound like they are so well meaning. We didn't want to be your daddy. We wanted you to be independent. Well, if you really wanted that, you would have left us alone and paid like everybody else should or would in a similar situation. When you're on someone else's land or rent free, and Powhatan showed us how that was supposed to look. They were supposed to pay him tribute. So it no longer be necessary for the government to oversee Indian welfare. Ain't nobody asked you to do that. As a separate government, we would have had our own military. But all you did was terrorize us because that was the last thing you wanted us to have because you were fitting to dominate us. So you definitely wanted to dissolve our tribes for many reasons. The ways it had previously done and nobody asked it to, including providing meager annuities. What? Annuities with American Indians treated as dependents. Sound like they was paying us or the Native Americans. Annuities. I want to just quickly look up annuity for clarity for those like me who maybe forgot what that means. It's like annual, right? Annuity. Let me see. Annuity definition. Okay, where's the definition? Annuity. Okay, an investment. An annuity is a series of payments made at equal intervals. Examples of annuities are regular deposits to a savings account monthly. Let's look up definition. Okay, now this is a dictionary definition. That was Wikipedia. I didn't realize. Sum of money paid to someone each year, typically for the rest of their life. So they come here and got a pot to piss in, and they're making it sound like they are paying us, and you're using my resources. You're just giving me what's mine. Come on, get real. So they were providing meager annuities. No, you should have been paying top-notch rent, like you make us pay right now to live in a city like New York. Like how am I paying to live in my land? You better save that for the foreigners. But see, they trying to help the foreigners, and they pay them more. So even if they did charge higher, the foreigner could live there like it would be a breeze. But they don't want Indians to have. Meanwhile, they owe us everything. Meager annuities with American Indians treated as dependents, dependent on their own land, though. Not dependent on you. See, they got your foreigner that you want to keep here of civilized tribes and incorporated tribes. Your foreigner got it all twisted. He's starting to think this is his because of Indians like you. And that's all the Indians you see mostly on YouTube. They're all talking about, like, somebody should have been talking about us being Indians, not taxed, and showing us how to do it or giving a rough idea of how. Nope. It's like they're talking all around some really basic issues that are already, the outline is kind of there already because we're called Indians not taxed. But we all act like we don't know what that means. For some reason, this government got us really like they blow something in the air and Indians start talking about Trump every day. And it's like But what about your standing on the land as Indians not taxed? You know, how do you implement that? Why don't we brainstorm on that? Our heads are all caught in the circus, man. And that's done purposely when it comes to the civilized tribes. That civilized tribes don't want the Indians to be Indians not taxed because they living off them taxes that them other Indians is paying. That has to be what's going on, y'all. I'm just using my common sense. That's why Indians, you think you bringing them something like good news, and they be like, oh shit, I ain't getting that nigga's taxes. Or these, if all they start doing that, how the government gonna give me my little cut in our little scheme that we got going? Oh shit. Let's talk about Trump. And then, they just start talking about everything that has nothing to do with Indian, really being what they're supposed to be. Because that's not a topic even on the table. It's just talk a lot of it's sort of like what the Moors do. You just divert by talking, just about getting deep on stuff that really is not expedient to what you need to be as an Indian not taxed, for instance. Oh boy. So the government, they didn't want to treat us like dependents. They didn't want to be our daddy no more. Because they get more money the other way. On February 8th, 1887, Congress passed the Dawes Act, named for its author, Senator Henry Dawes of Massachusetts, also known as the General Allotment Act. The law authorized the president to break up reservation land. So they give you a reservation and then they come and break that up. That's why, as I always say, everything they give you, they can take back when you play by their game. Okay? How did you get on a reservation in the first place? They gave it to you, right? Because you like so happy to get the crumbs, right? So you on a reservation, they done took the best part of your land, got you, excuse me, somewhere out there somewhere. So also known as the General Allotment Act, the law authorized the president to break up reservation land. That's breaking up your tribe. Break up reservation land, so you're dividing the tribes, which was held in common by the members of a tribe, yeah, into small allotments. It's called divide and conquer. Yeah. Small allotments to be parceled out to individuals. They don't want you to be part of a tribe because when you're so by yourself that they can start demanding that you get a driver's license. You pay taxes. You got to start taking the census. We got to find out how many you Negroes we done stole. We could tax you to more than anybody because you're so dumb to even you need to be taxed because you're too stupid to know that you're Indian not taxed. So they see this is what I'm saying, y'all. When you go to stand up, even as an individual, you are justified and you are protected. Why are you protected? Because this government signed a constitution knowing that you were not to be counted in their system. You were not to be counted for taxes, and you were not to be counted for representatives in Congress because you were said to have your own tribe set up, your own government. The Indians don't want to do that. They want to be led, controlled, dominated, paid in colonizer monopoly dollars. No sense of where the wealth is really coming from. Not at all. Yeah. Okay, so also known as the General Allotment Act, the law authorized the president to break up reservation land, which was held in common by the members of a tribe, into small allotments to be parceled out to individuals who were not even Indians, is what I think. I think the Homestead Act had something to do with this, but we'll just keep reading. To each head of family, 1/4 of a section. To each single person over 18 years of age, 1/8 of a section. To each orphan child under 18 years of age, 1/8 of a section. And to each other single person under 18 years now living, or who may be born prior to the date of the order of the president directing an allotment to the lands embraced in any reservation, 1/16 of a section. So wait a minute, I think we missed something. Thus, Native Americans registering on a tribal roll. I'm sorry, we didn't read that part. Native Americans registering on a tribal roll were granted allotments of reservation land. Taking your land and parceling it out to you to break you up from a tribe. Little by little, they just get rid of you altogether. Section 8 of the Act specified groups that were to be exempt from the law. Well, see, when they say exempt, that means you're in their system when you're not supposed to be. So they're exempting you, but that's still not what the Constitution provide. Being tax exempt is not the same as being an Indian not taxed point blank, period. And he's yawning. Okay. So Section 8 of the Act specified groups that were to be exempt from the law. It stated that the provisions of this act shall not extend to the territory occupied by the Cherokees, Creeks, Choctaws, Chickasaws, Seminoles, and Osage, Miamis, and Peorias, and Sacs and Foxes in the Indian Territory, nor to any of the reservations of the Seneca Nation of New York Indians in the state of New York. So those are Iroquois. This is all Iroquois, even though some of these tribes are, what do you call it, Muskogean, they're in under like the Iroquois, it's really the Iroquois, kind of finding the favor and spreading it to these other, Cherokees were the only ones who spoke Iroquois of these Creeks, Choctaws, Chickasaws, Seminoles, who they're saying spoke Muskogean. Only Cherokees spoke Iroquois. So I think it's just a way to embed Iroquois, and, insulate them with these other tribes, these other linguistic Indians. Okay. Nor to any of the residents. Okay, so the 5 civilized tribes are getting a privilege and a benefit, but it's not their birthright. It's the federal government giving them something, making them exempt from the law. But again, whatever they give you, they can take back. So 1 year you're exempt. Maybe let's say the Democrats come in and now you're not exempt anymore, and then the Republicans come in and maybe you'll be exempt again. It's the tennis match, little ping pong game going on that Indians they're too mesmerized by the ball going back and forth that they forget that it's just going back and forth. It's repetitive. Wash, rinse, repeat. And meanwhile, Indians are never sovereign. They're all being directed by the federal system, which integrates them into an international system. Yeah. So they'll get pulled out into the sea, whereas Indians who are not part of that, we can't get pulled into the sea. Now, these Indians, they can get pulled back into the sea when their colonizer wants to, because he has control over them. He made them tax exempt. You know, that was a god that did that. Turn, because I'm sleepy. Did I say God did that? Uh-oh. I'm only on page 1 of 6. Oh boy. Okay. So yeah, the five civilized tribes. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Because I start getting sleepy. I start making up stuff. Um, so you see, they can do what they want with the five civilized tribes. They can make them exempt, but then if they can make them exempt, they can make them non-exempt as well. That's what everybody's not understanding. Your colonizer has the final say. You don't have it because you have given up your birthright. So really, in your colonizer's eyes, you're condemned for that too, because you'll be like considered like Esau, who despised his birthright, right? So they somewhere in their system, they look at you as not worthy of respect. So, and they don't respect you. They just need you so, they'll have, some trophy Indians that could sort of appear that, oh, you've arrived, you recognize. Just because the devil recognized you don't mean that you've arrived. Okay. Subsequent events, however, extended the act's provisions to these groups as well. Okay. Okay. In 1893, President Grover Cleveland appointed the Dawes Commission to negotiate with the Cherokees, Creeks, Choctaws, Chickasaws, the five civilized tribes. They always talk about them, and Seminoles, who were known as the five civilized tribes. As a result, as a result of these negotiations, several acts were passed that allotted a share of common property to members of the five civilized tribes in exchange for abolishing, their tribal governments and recognizing state and federal laws. Oh boy. You see, when I say that we were not supposed to be part of state and federal laws, when you become federal, they're pushing for you to be under their laws so they can do whatever they want with you. Indians think that that's being respected. No, you're giving them permission to genocide you. You're agreeing to the genocide. But the weird thing is, you're giving me my land only if I allow you to dominate over me. So it's like I have land, but I don't have any power. This this beast is a beast. Trump ain't gonna change this, y'all, because he's here on that. This is what allows him to be here. The two-ring circus is what allows him to be here. He's not gonna change it, y'all. They're gonna do what they're gonna always do. is have the Democrats swing all the way out with the craziness, and then the Republicans are going to be act like savior and reel everything back in. But again, in all the years that the Republican Party has been in this country, when did they do anything for American Indians that would make you think that suddenly they care? It's all a rouge. They do things so that they can, what do they call that? It's Hegelian, the Hegelian dialect. That's what this is. Create the problem to create the solution. The Democratic and Republican parties are about. But what that does is it stagnates the country because we're always arguing the same thing that we've been arguing for the last however many years. You're still talking about abortion. So that means we're retarded as a nation because I'm sure we have new issues like post COVID and health issues, you know, that will act, that these other issues that we always have, they never get solved because we always arguing the same thing. Wasn't there immigration talks before? Abortion, women's rights, taxes, that just the same old litany of bullshit that never gets completely solved because we have to leave it so we can always argue these mute points. So, as a result of these negotiations, several acts were passed that allotted a share of common property to members of the five civilized tribes in exchange for abolishing their tribal governments and recognizing state and federal laws. So they just took you out of commerce. That's why the Commerce Clause is also useless because this bastard government, all they're trying to do is get you to be part of the states. Now, they were supposed to regulate commerce between you and the states. But if you become part of the state, ain't no more you they got to regulate. They'll take over your position and they'll get the profits. That was the goal, to tax you and to take the profits you would make in quote unquote commerce. That's how they thought regulating commerce should go. That's why you never let your colonizer be the sole regulator of commerce. If you're going to regulate commerce, you better be right there with him. Regulating more than he. So this is how the five civilized tribes get played, but they're so infiltrated that it doesn't even matter. They're it's like they might as well be foreign because I think they're dominated by foreigners in their family, and they don't see that the Indian side of the family is the black sheep getting genocided, slaughtered. In order to receive the allotted land, members were to enroll with the Office of Indian Affairs, later renamed the Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA. Once enrolled, the individual's name went on the DAWES rolls. This process assisted the BIA and the Secretary of the Interior in determining the eligibility of individual members for land distribution. How are you giving me my own land is beyond me. Because as an Indian outside of the system, you would be entitled to your land as a sovereign. So this government has nothing to do with your land. You could make the prices. You can drill for whatever you had. Whatever you found was yours. You didn't have to pay the government because you found some gold. You wouldn't have to give the government. See, they didn't want you to have that kind of autonomy. They wanted to dominate. And I'm sorry, Indians. Some of y'all will want to settle for this because you don't, I guess because you so deeply bed and have them embedded into your family that now you're fighting their battle against and you're doing it against other Indians. So you don't even want to talk about our sovereign standing because you're going to be constantly steering us to give up our standing so that we can be federal. So now your new mission as civilized tribes in the Iroquois Confederacy, the Lenni Lenape, is you have to constantly make Indians feel like there is no other system but the federal system. There is no, you must join us, join us, join us. It's like join the zombies, join the vampires, join us, join us, join us, so that's what is going to present a problem. That's why I say that there's two types of Indians. The ones who are preaching the same old sermon that colonizers have been preaching for years, and then Indians like me who, in an awakening, you're seeing what was taken from you. You see the whole thing before your eyes, but they want you to don't pay attention to what you see. Just vote for Trump and he's going to take care of all of that for you. I'm sorry. I know that that's not going to happen. Maybe you can delude yourself with those kind of fairy tales, but I know that that's never going to happen. Look at how they're treating you just with this DAWES Act. Once enrolled, the individual's name went on the DAWES rolls. This process assisted the BIA and the Secretary of the Interior in determining the eligibility of individual members for land distribution. That's how your tribes were dissolved. You became an individual, basically petitioning for your own little piece of land where you're going to be paying taxes. Or from an Indian not taxed to an Indian taxed. Breaking your own constitution that some Indians are saying that we built this system. So why would you go against your own system? Why would you go against your own best interests if you designed this system? I think the system was just dragging you along. It said some nice words that it never meant to live by. And as long as they could get you to agree to it, they would never have to go by it. The purpose of the DAWES Act and subsequent acts that extended its initial provisions was purportedly to protect American Indian property rights. It's such bullshit. That is such bullshit. If they want to protect our property rights, maybe, now just say maybe we didn't have an army. What they could do was if they had a bigger army, just make sure that the army protected American Indians, right? There would be no problem with that because we're two nations, but you're sharing my land. So it would be no problem. It shouldn't be for you to extend any beneficial services to me. You're on my land. You shouldn't want a war with me. You're here because the Iroquois basically is saying, come on in, come on in. So then why can't, if all Indians were about that life, why are you treating us so bad? Like you're trying to take over when you're saying, the Indians, they gave us the Constitution. You're not saying that it was You're not explicitly saying that not all Indians agree to this, though. We're just going to talk about the Iroquois Confederacy. Meanwhile, you're pushing Indians around, giving their own land back to them. What are they getting? But bullied or dominated. The purpose of the Dawes Act and subsequent acts that extended its initial provisions was purportedly to protect American Indian property rights, particularly during the land rushes of the 1890s. But in many instances, the results were vastly different. The land allotted to individuals included desert or near desert lands unsuitable for farming. This is what they're doing to civilized tribes. Why do civilized tribes their biggest cheerleaders? I'll never understand it. I just think they treat them nicely when an awakening happens, and they must be getting something a little extra. Like, we're gonna be nice to you now because you got to tell these other Indians to be like you. Something is really up in the coffee. Okay, so we got desert lands. In addition, the techniques of self-sufficient farming were much different from their tribal way of life. Many did not want to take up agriculture, and those who did want to farm could not afford the tools. Remember, we talked about the tools, animal seed, and other. You see, oh my God! So that's how they regulated commerce. They made the prices too high for. Oh God, the ancestors are busy, yo. Their ancestors are busy. And the sad thing is, it's not funny. It's sad because they're here to assist us to freedom. And we have pretty much all Indians you see saying, can you be a slave, please? No, don't do that. You're going to get in trouble. Become a civilized tribe or do a 501c3 like me. And look what Trump is doing for us. Oh my God, I feel like I'm in a bad Stepford Wife movie or Invasion of the Body Snatchers or something. It's like, am I the only Indian that has this? Uh, I I knew the idea that something ain't right. Telling you how to treat Indians, and Indians are saying no, they're going to treat me better tomorrow when Trump comes into office. Again, after the Republicans are voted out, no doubt, when the Democrats come back, then what? Indians, then what? What you gonna do then? Or you just put your head between your knees and cry it out? You're just gonna cry it out for the whole 4 or 8 years? That's what your life is, and you want it that way? Because you refuse to stand on Indian business. But look, y'all, look how commerce went. So a lot of us didn't do farming, but we were forced to because they broke up our tribes. So now your tribe had a setup where those who knew how to farm did farming. Those who didn't did something else. But now the people who did something else, they have to farm because they by themselves now. Can you imagine how hard life would be after they broke up your tribe and you had to do everything? And then you had to buy farming tools. You don't even know how to farm. Some of us didn't, and you could not afford. This is what I was talking. Remember in the last video, I was saying they clearly that regulation meant that they were charging us for farm tools and machines or whatever, but they needed seed. Oh my God. They took over commerce. They didn't regulate it. They took over it. They made you have to buy. They came here making you put a price tag on your shit and selling it to you. Many did not want to take up agriculture, and those who did want to farm could not afford the tools. So then what happens to that Indian? What happens to that? He loses his land, y'all. Then what happens to him? I guess that's your first criminals or your first homeless jail fodder. You see how they did us, y'all? They were charging us shit. Now they should have been paying us. We shouldn't even have to work. They should have been paying us. There were also problems with inheritance. Often young children inherited allotments that they could not farm because they had been sent away to boarding schools. Multiple heirs also caused a problem. When several people inherited one little allotment, the size of the holdings became too small for, oh God, I didn't even anticipate all this for effective farming. Tribes were also often underpaid for land allotments. And when individuals did not accept the government requirements, their allotments were sold to non-native individuals. Baby, when I tell you this federal system is the beast, the devil on earth, and y'all want it to stay. Ew, this is terrible, y'all. Tribes were also so that the annuities, I guess I think they talk about annuities for the land. They were underpaid. And when individuals did not accept the government requirements, so now the government are making requirements for you to get paid. You see, this is how they kill off the people of the land. This is how you make their lives miserable, like many of our lives are to some degree today. That's why everybody wants Trump, right? Because they're miserable and they think Trump is going to do something. It's going to put a band aid on it, but it can never be fixed because that's what colonization is about. Hello, is anybody coherent these days? I know we got the bad food. I know we got shit all in the whatever, whatever. We don't even want to go there, but I know that the ancestors have still awakened us. So we're still capable of having common sense. Tribes were also often underpaid. Now, he's saying tribes here, but they breaking up the tribes. So, oh, they were supposed to get paid to give up their land, I guess. See, when you take money in place of land, you become homeless. You have a few dollars, but you're homeless. And now you have to pay somebody's rent because you're homeless and you got a few dollars. But I think our Indians are so money oriented that they don't see how this will go when the money runs out because you're paying rent. Now you have nothing. Uh, when individuals did not accept the government requirements, their allotments were sold to non-native. Wow, causing American Indian communities to lose vast acreage of their tribal lands. This is what you get, Indians, and you get what you ask for. Um, ooh, wait. Oh, this is the actual transcript of the okay, so that's the actual transcript. We might do a part two, y'all. I don't want to make this a very long video. I am a little tired, and it's only page 2 of 6, but you get the idea. You get the idea. There you have the Dawes Act of 1887, another federal government act that seriously disrespects Indians not taxed. Indians out there who want to go back to being Indians not taxed, we need to speak, especially if you're on the East Coast, you're probably Algonquin. That's what I would like to one day do is take a map and figure out, let Indians see that they're Algonquin, and then whoever, is of the mind to start, you don't have to be a large, group, just some kind of council that represents Algonquins of, the whole, East Coast. And that's all I want to say for now. And I know a lot of people are just, I just want to watch videos, but it would be very helpful to have something like that, because we definitely have a standing, a legal standing to be separate from this government. But the thing is, in their system, they are not looking as colonizers. Okay, as colonizers, the push is to just take what they want from us. But when they're trying to put up a show of, uh, you know, being fair and equitable, that's what the whole Constitution, it was supposed to give America the look to entice other people to come here and help them to genocide Indians. Look at how good we are. Look, you get land. Look, we're a free country, allegedly, with a Bill of Rights in the territorial constitution. The territorial belongs to Britain. So your rights are basically coming from Britain in the Bill of Rights. Indians are still the only ones who really have the access to true freedom. Because I'm telling you, there is something up with your Bill of Rights being part of the territorial constitution, but it couldn't be anything else because the land does belong to Indians. So that's where the foreigners are getting fooled. The Bill of Rights is not attached to the continental constitution. It's attached to the territorial, which is the British nobility, is the territorial. And the municipal is the Vatican. The Pope did denounce or repudiate the doctrine of discovery. So we really, I think I need to direct my call to brothers who are on the East Coast. We used to be patrilineal, so maybe some brothers, might want to stand up for their Algonquin heritage. And we have to resurrect it because this system is still genociding Algonquins as East Coast Indians. But I believe we were more than East Coast Indians, y'all. It wasn't just the coast that the Algonquins were on, but that's what they're marginalizing us. We were well into the South, y'all. We were well into the South. Yeah, we're gonna, try to talk about that a little more in another video. For now, I want to say thank you for watching. This was just a little to be sort of supplemental to the last video. This video is to show why the government owes us duty to support us as Indians not taxed, because they help to break up our tribes, But just because our tribes are broken up, that doesn't mean we don't still have we don't still have a legal footing, a legal standing as outside of their system. No, they don't want us to be outside their system. They want to act like no one lives in this house. We're just in an abandoned house that has all the luxuries we need, and we don't have to pay nobody nothing, right? That's why the DAWES Act was ever done. And we didn't look at the other article, but it does talk about how the DAWES Act also gave rise to the $5 Indians. That means anybody could become an Indian with the DAWES Act. But I want to reiterate, Indians that were part of the DAWES or what, you don't have to stay in a system that was built for the express purpose of making you no longer Indian. You could say, you know what, I'm stepping out of that world. I'm going back to Indian, not tax. Why? Because it was guaranteed in the Constitution. So all this other stuff, you could say this was unconstitutional. If you were a Dawes Roll Indian, just say it was unconstitutional. I didn't. Apparently, my ancestors didn't know what they were in for. Same thing with any of the 5 civilized tribes. Yeah, y'all could say, you know what? I look back now and I realize y'all treated me like shit the whole entire time. I'm going back to being an Indian, not taxed, just so I can run my land. But again, I said something kind of that stuck with me that I never thought of before, and that is, even if you are mixed with a foreign, this land still belongs to Indians. We don't have to, just because we mix with you don't mean that we get lost. If you don't like the way we do things, you leave, you have another home to go to. But just because you marry into an Indian family doesn't mean you take over. That still belongs to the Indian. But we have to get law in the land, law of the land back up in the land, because commerce is where every Tom, Dick, and Harry can have your shit in commerce. In law of the land, it's going to be, nope, no matter who's here, the land will always be American Indians, and we will always get compensated for it. Till next time, I want to leave you in peace and power and say, be and stay. Highly favored. Next time, thank you for watching.